You've probably heard these terms thrown around: cuckolding, hotwifing, swinging. And look, on the surface, they can kind of blur together. But when you really dig in and peel back the labels, you find out they're not just different activities. They're like different universes, psychologically speaking, each with its own set of rules, power dynamics, and emotional goals.
So that's the big question, right? Are we just using a bunch of different words for the same basic thing? Once you get past all the slang and the labels, is the experience deep down, the actual psychology of it all, really any different?
Well, the answer is a hard no. And we're not talking about tiny little details here. The differences are huge. Each one is built on a totally unique foundation of power, desire, and emotion. So let's actually break it all down.
All right, so to really get our heads around this, we've got to start with one thing: power. Power is like the invisible architecture in these relationships. It shapes literally everything else that happens.
Okay, so look at this. It all boils down to the core power structure. Cuckolding is all about hierarchy, a power imbalance. Hotwifing, on the other hand, is centered on empowerment. And swinging, that's built on pure balanced reciprocity. These are not small details. They change the entire game. Let's dig into what that actually feels like. So to understand cuckolding, you first have to wrap your head around a pretty wild paradox: erotic humiliation. This is where all those feelings we're usually taught to run away from, like jealousy or feeling inadequate, are actually the goal. Why? Because for some people, those feelings are the very thing that triggers intense sexual arousal. It's not a bug, it's the feature. And this is where you see the first massive split. In cuckolding, the turn-on is directly connected to the husband feeling a lower status. The internal story is all about his inadequacy. But in hotwifing, it is the absolute polar opposite. The arousal comes from a place of pride, of celebration. The whole internal narrative just flips from "look at what I lack" to "look at how amazing and desired my wife is." Now, let's compare hotwifing to swinging. Hotwifing is what we'd call asymmetric. The focus is really on one partner's sexual freedom, while the other partner is in a supportive, facilitating role. Swinging, though, is all about balance. It's a completely level playing field. It's not about one person exploring while the other watches. It's about both partners exploring side by side, together, as a team. So we've got the power dynamics down. That's kind of like the blueprint, right? But what about the feeling? What's the emotional payoff these structures are actually designed to create? Let's talk about the emotional architecture of each one. Think of it like this. Each dynamic is tuned to a totally different emotional frequency. For cuckolding, the goal is intensity, and that's often powered by jealousy or humiliation. For hotwifing, the main vibe is warmth, which comes from pride, and a really cool concept we'll get to in a sec. And for swinging, it's all about the thrill of a shared adventure. So how in the world can a negative feeling like anxiety actually lead to arousal? Well, there's a fascinating psychological theory called excitation transfer that helps explain it. Basically, it says our bodies are kind of bad at telling different kinds of arousal apart. So the racing heart and jitters you get from anxiety or even fear can get misinterpreted by your brain and just pour gasoline on the fire of sexual excitement. It's the same reason a scary movie can sometimes feel thrilling. What you get is this wild biochemical cocktail happening inside you. You're mixing stress hormones like cortisol with the big pleasure chemical dopamine, and the result is this incredibly powerful, intense feeling that, yeah, for some people, can even feel addictive. That whole emotional roller coaster from anxiety to arousal to resolution, that is the experience. Okay, so if cuckolding runs on that intense, anxious energy, hotwifing runs on something totally different: compersion. You might have heard this called the opposite of jealousy. It's that genuine feeling of happiness, and in this case, erotic pleasure, that you get from watching your partner experience joy and fulfillment, even if it's with someone else. That feeling is the absolute bedrock of the hotwifing dynamic. And this also changes how intimacy gets built, you know. In hotwifing, the bond gets deeper through this really focused support and celebration of one partner. But in swinging, you're building what you could call team-based intimacy. The emotional high comes from tackling the adventure together, from getting that validation from others as a unit, and then bringing all that shared excitement back home. Okay, we've covered the power dynamics, we've covered the emotional payoffs, so let's bring it all together. When you look at the whole picture, why does someone choose one path over another? What's the deep-down psychological need that each one is really trying to fill? So, who is cuckolding for? Well, it's really for people who are chasing that intensity. It's for those who get a thrill from breaking taboos, from surrendering control and exploring submission. It's a way to lean into that powerful cycle of anxiety and arousal, and for some, to play with and even flip traditional masculine roles on their head.
Hotwifing, on the other hand, is a whole different vibe. This appeals to people who get turned on by celebrating their partner. The real desire here is to feel that warmth of compersion, to build a deeper intimacy that's based on radical trust and open support. It's about feeling genuine pride in your partner's freedom and seeing them shine.
And then you've got swinging. This is for the partners who really see themselves as a team, an adventure duo. The main draw here is the shared journey, built on a foundation of absolute equality and fairness. It's about finding excitement and novelty together and getting that amazing feeling of being desired by others as a couple.
And really, when you get down to it, it all comes back to this one simple idea. This isn't about which way is better or right. There is no single right way. There's only the way that's authentic and works for a couple, as long as it's built on a foundation of integrity, incredible communication, and genuine care.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last question to think about. If you just strip away all the labels, all the jargon, and just look at the deep-down psychology of power, emotion, and connection, what kind of structure, what kind of dynamic would truly honor your authentic desires?